Welcome everyone to Jewel TV. I am Julia Kelleher and I am so excited to be back on the air live with you here from our Jewel Images studio in Bend, Oregon. It is a temporary setup for us here as our old studio back behind me a couple doors down is being completely remodeled. So we're in this space for just a month or two more. But in the meantime, we just felt like we couldn't keep Taco Latte, as it's been called in the past, away from you guys. So we have a whole new look. We have a whole new product we're developing, Jewel TV. It is free for everyone to watch on a weekly basis. And of course, we broadcast it live in our Facebook group every week. So you can ask questions, take part in the conversation, and get to know us a little bit more. And of course, help you in your educational journey, get those questions answered, and just have a community to build on. So today I am so very excited to welcome Michelle Parsely. So let me just kind of briefly tell you a little bit about her, and then I'll introduce her. So she has become just an amazing friend. I adore her so dearly. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you. So we can introduce her. She is an amazing lady, and she's going to be talking all about starting off in print competitions. So if you're even thinking about maybe entering this year, this is the lady you want to talk to. She, of course, is a Diamond Photographer of the Year, multiple GIA winner, Canon Par Excellence Award, twice I believe she was a winner. So she's going to be discussing about print competition and getting started with us today in Topical Latte, episode 19. Of course, brought to you by Jewel TV. If you want to get the archives to Jewel TV, go to jewel-tv.com. All of our Taco Latte episodes are there. You just simply have to opt in. The opt-in looks a little bit like this. Put your first name, your last name, your email, and you'll get access to the archives from here on out, as well as all the freebies. So you don't have to re-opt in every time you want a freebie, which of course is just making it easier for you guys as students to access what you want. So that's how you get access to the archives. Of course, Michelle has some incredible freebies to give away as well today. So those, of course, will come later on in the broadcast. So let me go ahead and introduce to you Michelle Parsely, who is a master craftsman, master artist. Oh my gosh, CPP, whatever, you name it. You've got like everything behind your name. Welcome, my dear. It's so wonderful.
All the letters.
They're
all
letters.
back there.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes, and thank you for being here. It really means a lot to me that you took the time out to talk about print competition. I know you're super passionate about it, yes?
I am. I love print competition. I love helping people get started in print competition and get started on the right foot and not make some of the same mistakes I did when, you're trying to figure it out and you have no idea what you're doing. It is a little confusing the first few times. So I do love to help people get started on the right foot.
It is, and you can make a ton of mistakes in the beginning. I know I made enormous mistakes, but it's also like an incredible learning process. I mean, I truly think my work improved the most when I did print comp. Wouldn't you say the same about you?
I agree. I feel like it's the cheapest, best education available.
It really is. It really is.
And it is an investment, but I don't know of anything that will increase your skills faster than entering print competition, because it forces you to look at your work in a whole new way.
It forces you to be critical and like actually go, okay, what's wrong with this? And the problem is that once you start competing, you start seeing stuff in your work that you never saw before, and it begins to annoy you. You'll see color casts and weird bright spots on things. You're like, oh my gosh, I got to get rid of that. And it does. It makes you better.
Well, and it makes you look at your old work like this. Oh, I'm humiliated.
Right? Put those scissors to the eye. I cannot do this.
Pencil.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about, of course, one of the things getting involved in quiz competition is the 12 elements, right? And you have a wonderful presentation for us today. So
I do.
Chat back and forth, and I'll chime in with questions. Those of you who have questions, go ahead and post them in the Facebook live feed. We're going to answer questions after we're all done, and take some of your concerns and things that you have questions about when it comes to Michelle's presentation here. But I'm going to chat with her back and forth and ask questions that I think you guys may need the answers to. So as we discuss here, I'll kind of interject and interrupt if that's okay as we go. Michelle, is that all right?
Oh yeah, that's fine. This, especially the beginning here, is meant to be kind of a joint effort between the two of us. So, because I have a bunch of your images in here.
So fun. So fun. Thank you, by
All
the
right,
way.
so we're going to talk about the 12 elements, and these are
First of
the
all,
elements.
what are they though? What are the 12 elements for
The
someone
12 elements are the things that judges kind of have in their head when they're looking at your image to give it a score.
Okay.
Basically, the things that your images are going to be scored by. So the more you know about them and the more you understand them, the better off you'll be with your entries. But I'm going to tell you the truth. When I read through the 12 elements, I might as well be reading Greek. Just reading it does not really sink in for me because I'm a very visual learner. So I'm hoping that by sharing some images and kind of giving some examples, it'll kind of, take the Greek out of it and of what they're looking for. So that's the goal here today. Number one on the list is actually impact. And so I've got a couple of images to share with you. One is Julia's and one is mine. And Julia, if you want to tell me about yours, I won't
In
talk
terms
about
of
yours.
impact, yeah. Well, an impact really, I've always defined impact as that aha moment. When you see the image for the first time, it gives you that emotional pull, that like, that stop your heart, kind of suck your breath in feeling. And I know this is not a technical definition of impact, but that's really what
No.
impact is. Impact is when you look at an image and you have that overwhelming emotional response to it. And my image here, this was shot in studio. And then later a little bit of painting was applied and the ribbons were added in, and so was the bird. But I loved her emotion and her soft expression, but I needed something more fairy tale associated with it. And so to turn her into a dream, a princess, this image is titled Her Happily Ever After. I needed something more to get that impact. And so the bird and the ribbons and the flow and the wind was added to it. But impact, I think, is a combination of physical characteristics. Don't you think, Michelle?
I agree. I agree with everything you said. Impact is when you're walking through the print gallery, it's the images that stop you in your tracks and you're just like, oh my goodness, I have to look at this longer and I need to get closer and I want to understand how this was made. That's when you know you've got an image that has impact. And you and I both really like the storybook kind of fairy tale-ish themes to our images for the most part. So my image down here in the lower left is actually a composite. Obviously, I don't have a leprechaun living in my yard, even though I'm in the boonies. But, it is just that fairy tale kind of idea. And I enjoy the challenge of creating these concepts photographically. So, but to get that done and then to have it have impact, it's the ones that stop you in your tracks. To me, that is the most rudimentary definition of impact.
I think that's a great definition, but I think the other thing to bring home is that it's a combination of elements. It's
It
almost like
is.
all the 12 elements come together to create the impact.
Yeah, and you really have to hit them all to have enough impact to get you where you want to go most of the time.
When I always tell beginning competitors that impact is what earns you points. Impact and story, that's what makes a judge want to score things high. Then
I
they start
agree.
dinging stuff. They start knocking off points for technical issues and all the other 12 elements. Do you think that's accurate, or is that too general to say?
I don't know that I necessarily knock off points. The training is you look at the image and you place it in a category and then you give it a score within that category.
Okay.
So there's not necessarily I'm docking points because your lighting is not technically correct. That's not the way the judging process works. But impact does play heavily into the way I score an image. If it's got amazing impact, I'm going to score it higher.
Well, and I should also note to those of you watching that Michelle is an international approved juror. So she has been through the training. She knows what she's talking about, people. She really does. But it takes
I do.
a judge to tell you these things. I mean, without judges to actually educate us on this stuff, how would we know, right?
Yeah. It's a confusing process. And when you don't understand how something is judged, how can you enter an effective image?
Yeah.
You really need to understand the judging process. So the next item on the list is actually technical excellence. And I've chosen a really simple image to illustrate this. You've got to have posing that's correct, lighting that's correct, good eye contact in this particular image is necessary. There's all kinds of things that roll into technical excellence, but the most common things that people want to look at is your lighting technically correct? That would be number one on my list. Do you have a lighting pattern? Is the light flat? Do you have butterfly light, what kind of ratio do you have? So that is one of those things that judges will take into consideration when they are scoring your images. They want to know, do you have a technically proficient image? And this image is butterfly light or clamshell. You can call it either one. It is a lighter ratio than you will see a lot of times in competition. I chose this one specifically because I hear all the time, well, you can't enter images with flat light, and how did this one merit? It is not actually flat light. If you look, there is a shadow under her nose and under her nose. So definitely a lighting pattern here. You just have to learn to identify it.
Yeah. Well, and sharpness too is a big one. Like if
Sharpness,
you're gonna,
yeah.
if you're gonna look at this image, the eyes, what draws you in need to be sharp. Especially like in pet portraits, I see all the time. They've got this gorgeous nose fur that's sharp, and then the eyes are just slightly soft, and that's not gonna cut it. Like the eyes are the soul of the portrait, and so getting your eyes sharp in a situation like that is important. Now, if you're going for that depth of field look, and for some reason the nose of the animal needs to be sharp for a reason, and it contributes to the story, then that should be the way it is. But technical excellence comes down to, do you know what you're doing when it comes to creating an image for presentation? Am I accurate there?
Yeah, and there are exceptions to everything. I can't give you concrete rules because there's always going to be an exception. But I can tell you that just as a general rule, for a portrait of a human being, you want from the tip of their nose to their ears to the back of their ears to be in focus. So you need to have that much depth of field.
Yeah.
At minimum. If you can have more, that's great, but minimum, you should have that much depth of field. And for an animal, from the tip of the nose through like the shoulders, at least the back of the head, you want the ears, the eyes, the nose, all to be sharp. And if you're not accomplishing that, you need to think about a little bit more depth of field so you can get more of your image sharp, because that definitely will affect your score and possibly even cost you a merit if you enter an image without enough depth of field. Well, especially if it's a studio portrait.
I agree.
You have total control in a studio.
I agree 100%. Let's move on to number 3, but at the same time, I want you to talk about what a merit is. What's a merit?
That's a whole ball of wax right there. A merit is any image that scores 80 or above in print competition.
Okay.
And it meets the 12 element criteria that we're talking about here. The easiest way that I know to make people that aren't familiar with competition understand a merit, it's kind of like getting a blue ribbon.
Okay.
And you can get just a blue ribbon, which is a merit, or you can get the blue ribbon and then the Judge's Choice Award, which is kind of equivalent to showcase, or then you can get loan collection, which is like the overall winner of everything at like a fair type entrance.
Yeah. So lots of people can get a loan image. It's not just one person per se, for those who are totally starting out. But
right, it's not just one person, but the easiest way to equate a merit is that it is a blue ribbon. You have scored a blue ribbon.
Yeah.
And it's not like school grades where, in school 80 is barely passing.
Yeah.
No. In print
competition, awesome in the print comp world.
Yeah, in print competition, and 80 is like getting 100. And anything over that is extra credit. Man,
right?
You are rocking it if you get above an 80. So don't feel like you squeezed in by the skin of your teeth if you're scoring 80. Go out and throw a party, man. You got a merit.
Oh, awesome. So what is creativity?
Number 3 is creativity, and this is one of your images. It's one of my absolute most favorite images of yours as far as creativity goes.
Thank you.
I love the story that it tells, and that's part of the creativity is the story that we're seeing here. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't this Belinda?
This is Belinda when she was pregnant with her second child.
Awesome. I thought it was. And it's such a powerful story. It brings me historically to the Depression.
Yeah.
the Dust Bowl kind of thing. And I'm just totally sucked into the creativity of the story here. And that equals a higher score from the judge's perspective.
Yeah, and it did really well. I think it scored in the upper 80s. It didn't loan, unfortunately. It was one of my only prints that year that didn't loan. So of course, we all get disappointed when that happens. But there are some technical flaws with it and things going on. And sometimes it's just that day, and judging still is a subjective thing. It's not something that's a hard and fast black and white rule. And so if a judge on a panel really doesn't think it should loan, then they can talk people down. And the whole print competition process of having 5 judges look at your image, evaluate it, give it a score, and then they take the average is an incredible process, because if one judge doesn't like the final score, they can challenge the print and talk about why they think the score should go up or why they think the score should go down. And that's always like the most agonizing, anxious inducing process.
Absolutely.
It's also when you learn the most, because the judges talk about your image. And that's my goal, is if every image I can enter in competition gets challenged for some reason, then I'm doing okay. Whether that score is going to go up or go down, I'm going to learn something from it. And this one, didn't go loan, but that's okay. We learned a lot from it.
Well, and that's the thing. If you go into print competition looking to win, and I'm using air quotes here, you're going to be very disappointed. You've not really got the right attitude towards the process. You need to go into print competition thinking, this is my education.
Yeah.
And anything that happens, I'm going to take it as education and figure out what I need to do to either do better or continue on doing good at this particular thing, whatever the judges compliment, and use that to further your craft. So, attitude has a lot to do with what you take away from print competition. You really, really need to look at it as an educational opportunity rather than going after something to win.
And I agree. And, speaking on creativity comes as you do it more. Like, creativity is a practice skill. And so as you begin to compete more and more, your images are going to become more creative, more unique, different.
Yes. The more creative you are, the more creativity you have. You can't use it up.
Yes. Didn't Maya Angelou say that?
Yes, she totally did. There's
a wonderful quote about that. So
yes.
What's number 4, Michelle?
Well, actually, there's my creative images.
Sorry.
We'll skip them.
No. And I love this one on the right. That was done all in camera, wasn't it?
Yes, she is. Yes, she is wearing heavy costume makeup that is all in camera, except she's not actually holding the squirrel. I did composite the squirrel in. Hello, people rating.
Right.
I don't want, that's my daughter. I do not want her to get rabies. So, but other than that, everything that you see on her is actually on her. I did give her cat's eye pupils just because she's a tree nymph. She's a tree nymph. So
such a cool image. Cool.
Anyway, number 4 is actually style. And I think you are a wonderful representation of style. It's really funny. I can actually pick Julia's images out during judging without knowing they're hers. Even if I've never seen them, I go, you know what, I'm pretty sure that might be Julia's image, because your style is so consistent over all of your images. I can just see them and know that they're yours.
Thank you, hon. Thank you.
And that is part of competition, is developing a style, but it's also, does the style of what you're doing, go with the images you're creating? Are you creating like this beautiful soft image of Julia with Dean looking over her shoulder? You can't actually have like rough and, metal sticking in or something. That style wouldn't go with his expression.
Totally.
So you have to consider the style of the image you're creating, and the whole thing has to mesh.
Yes.
That's one of the 12 elements.
And I think style is an elusive element of the 12 elements. I think a lot of people get confused by style. And
I do too.
It's one of those things that does come over time. Like, unfortunately we don't have any here, but if you look at some of my early competition images, I was still exploring my style. But let me tell you, competing really helped me define it. Like, that's what I think helped me cross that threshold and really develop a style. And Michelle's the same way. I mean, I remember images you used to compete with, Michelle. They were just kind of very typical. They could have been anybody's, obviously technically excellent, but it wasn't until you started doing your composites and your painting that it was like, oh, that's a Michelle Parsely image. That's a Michelle.
Yeah. And a lot of times now I will intentionally do something to try to throw people off and so that they don't know it's
Yes.
mine, which is fun because when people come to you when the judging is happening and say, "Is that your image?" and you go, "Nope," and they're totally thrown, that's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. So what's
So
number 5?
number 5 is composition.
Ooh, I
And
love this
I'm
one.
just going to step out here and say, please branch out from the rule of thirds. It's not the only compositional rule out there. So I've got one example for you. This is one of my entries from a couple years ago. If I had used only the rule of thirds, I would probably have cropped this much differently. But I
Mhm.
actually created this using the golden spiral, and you can see it's absolutely perfect for the golden spiral. So make
It's
sure you're looking at your other crop options.
I agree, and it's amazing how that simple shift, just a slight shift of your subject matter, makes the story so much more impactful because it adds the negative space. It has that feeling of solitude and just that kind of lonely feeling. What's the title of this again? He was on his way home, or I forget the
Almost home.
Almost home, yeah. And so, like, the story there is impacted by the composition, and just by shifting him slightly down to the right and down to the lower portion of the edge of the image, you have a much more desolate looking subject matter. If you popped him up just a touch, it would still have that feeling, but a slight move, just a couple inches there, had so much of a difference in the overall impact of the image.
Well, and I can also tell you that the images that I've had that line up both on rule of thirds and on the golden spiral
Yeah,
are so much more impactful.
I bet. I
So,
bet.
if you compare and you're close, you're probably onto something if you're building a composition.
I agree. So play around with it, I guess, is the take home message
Definitely,
here, right?
definitely. And I definitely play around with crops to see where I need to be
And
for sure.
flipping images. All too often I would flip an image when I was learning. It could be like horizontal, vertical, whatever, and that
Yep.
would just change the entire feeling and meaning of the image as well.
It totally does. And since we're talking about flipping, in the West, we read from left to right. So most often you're going to see our subject in an image like this on the right side of the image. And, that's kind of what we expect. If the subject were on the left side of the image, this probably wouldn't have scored as high as it did because you've got all this empty space on the right to lead you out of the image. So kind of think of your subject as a stop sign. You're going to come into the image and you're coming to your subject and you're going to come to a stop sign at your subject. And if there's anything that pulls you out, you might want to look at that element and see what you can do to kind of eliminate that feeling of being pulled out of the image.
Wonderful advice. Wonderful advice.
So number 6 is presentation, and Julia and I differ greatly on this particular one. So
You know it.
up to this point, I have always entered digitally, purely an economic decision. I'm feeding 4 teenagers. They're about to eat me out of house and home, y'all. So I use digital presentation. And when I say presentation, I'm talking about this green mat that's around my image. This is digital presentation. But Julia, on the other hand, makes me look like a hack.
Oh, whatever.
Makes these beautiful, real mat presentation. Yeah, it's amazing. And don't you have a selling right now on
We
how you
do.
do
We
this?
just opened it yesterday. If you want to learn how to do this, the fine art mounting course, it is open. It's only open for a few days for a limited time. So if you want to get in and learn how to actually do this, go ahead and go to the Jewel-TV site and look at Michelle Parsley's page where her freebie is as well. And you can see the link to sign up for the course there too. And I'll tell you all that about that in the end. But this kind of presentation, guys, I know if you outsource this out to another company, it would cost you $200 or $300 to get a mat presentation done like this. But each of my images, I probably mat and mount it for about 30 bucks. It's not that expensive to do it with materials. And then as far as the actual hard cost of getting like a mat cutter and the equipment you need, it's about 120 bucks total to get started. And that would seriously do probably 4 prints for you right there. So you can see there's a silk shantung material behind the image. I've deckled and torn the edges of the print and then hand painted them. It's a very crafty, artistic thing. And by the way, I sell this as a product in my studio, and it's like so unique. Clients cannot get it anywhere, and it sells like hotcakes. So
that's what I was about to say. Don't limit this to competition, because you can really, really give some great images to your clients using this presentation. It's totally not a competition thing.
No,
Don't just leave it there.
But you can enter both print and digitally. You know, you could choose which method you want to, at least for PPA competition. For WPPI, like you see the Silver Distinction Award here, ribbon on this print, WPPI insists on printed images being entered. So, and WPPI print competition, I believe, is actually going on today. So, you know, you do need to print for some competitions, but PPA, you know, especially, it's a great way to start out because you can go digitally, not spend a lot of money.
Well, and the other thing is you can actually enter a mixed case. So you can enter 2 prints and 2 digital.
There you go.
If you want. So,
there you
know,
go.
if you just kind of want to get your feet wet and enter 1 or 2 prints, you totally can do that with PPA.
Well, and the nice thing too about printing is that when the gallery, say your image does get an 80 or above, and it hangs in the gallery, you know, an image with a mirror, it does get to hang, you get to walk by it and see it. And there's something to be said for that. Whereas digitally, you have to walk, you know, kind of stand there and wait for it to come by on the screen, and which can be kind of annoying. Whereas with it hanging in the gallery, you can see it there and everyone else can enjoy it too. So there's something to be said for actually printing your images. And, you know, I think you could totally harken back to the big industry conflict. Do we sell digital files or not? Do we print our work or not? And I'm such an advocate for printing in general with my clients and with myself that I think I would be a little hypocritical if I decided to enter digitally.
Well,
right?
you know, you have kind of twisted my arm, so there may be some
prints
for me for the first time in a very long time.
I'm going to get you print. And, you know, honestly, a lot of people ask me, will your images do better if you print? And, you know, judges don't necessarily weight digital images more than printed images. But to me, when I see a print come around that is done well and the presentation is incredible, it adds to the impact. It's another area for you to earn brownie points, for lack of a better word. I think
and it's another area to show the style of the image. So you would print something like this on like a watercolor paper or a fine art museum cotton rag.
Yes.
Which is not the same thing as seeing it on a screen. You don't get that same feel. It's a tactile kind of thing that you can't get on a screen.
I agree 100%. And I think that's why I like to print. But it doesn't mean you can't enter digitally. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't do well. Michelle kicks booty going.
I've got a couple of digital prints that have scores of 100. So I don't know that it necessarily affects the score, but sometimes I think certain images especially lend themselves to being printed on the correct media, and it just gives them that extra little to get them up over another level in scoring.
I think that was a great way of putting it, Michelle. I really do.
Because is a technical term. So number 7 is color balance. And this is one of Julia's images. I love, 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 love this image. The color balance in this is incredible. Now, it doesn't always mean that you've got, you know, one predominant color in an image. It just means the colors in your image work together. Just as an example that I think everybody can get, if this child was wrapped in a bright red piece of fabric, we would lose the color balance in this image. So Julia,
or if it was like yellow, like the mom's hair was really blonde, and I actually ashened it down, made it more ashen, because for that reason, you know, yellow and purple are very much opposite each other on the color wheel. So it would have made her hair stand out because it would have vibrated against the purple. And then that would take you away from the subject, which is the daughter, the young child, and then the mama. So, you know, you need to make sure that your eye is always going to that central subject of focus, where you want the eye to go. So if I left her hair very blonde and yellow, it would have distracted from the overall intention of the image.
You are a master at color harmony.
Thank you.
Master of it.
Thank you.
Number 8 is center of interest. And the easiest way that I know to explain this particular one is to show you an image with a lot of stuff in it.
Yes, good idea.
When you have a lot going on in an image, and I like to do this in some of my images, as long as the viewer's eye comes naturally back to the subject, you have an appropriate center of interest. So for me, this is a good example of having a good center of interest. There's a lot of stuff to see. It's a really fun image, but it is definitely got a very clear center of interest.
Yes. And what I love too is the use of color here. Like you have 3 distinct colors, the green, the blue, and the pink magenta tones, which are all very balanced on the color wheel, yet they add, like, because they pop off the screen, it gives it that childlike, playful effervescence to the piece, which is the whole point. You were trying to bring that childlike mentality to the viewer. And so
Yes, and the title of this image is actually Child's Play.
Child's Play. There you go. See, I didn't even know that.
Yes.
So, you know, you use color to your advantage, but this is another example of an image, even though the colors are contrasting to the background, they harmonize very, very well with the style, with the story, and the creativity of the image. If they had all been in a monochromatic, you know, another tone of green or yellow, they would not have stood out, and then your eye would not have gone to the center of interest.
And the other thing is the colors are repeated throughout the image. So if you look at the colors of the clothing on the mice, you can see those colors in other areas of the image, which gives it more balance.
I agree 100%.
So that's one of those
Awesome
things.
job. I love this image. So
It's
cute.
fun.
I imagine it like in a story illustrative, like in some.
Yeah. Okay, so number 9 is lighting. And again, Julia's image, one of my children came in my office and saw this image and said, it's like a combination of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Doctor Who. I thought that was a really cool comment. But the lighting on this is so amazing. She's got 2 different light sources.
Actually,
and
3. If you look at it, there's 3 because.
Well, true. From the outside inside the wardrobe.
Yeah, right. The winter scene.
Yes.
The scene has a very cool light to it, a blue-white light, and that is shining on Dean's camera left side of his face. You can also see the lantern, the red lantern that's sitting inside the closet is casting a little bit of yellow glow onto his boots and his leg. But then you can see the light bulb hanging from the ceiling in the room. That is also lighting his camera right side of his face and his leg. So the color temperature is important here of the light sources, but then also the fall off. You can tell as we get closer to the foreground where the teddy bear and the trains are, the light falls off at a very dramatic pace, the way light behaves with the inverse square law. So you want to be thinking about these things when you make your images. Is the lighting direction appropriate to what we're trying to achieve? Is the lighting color temperature appropriate to what we're trying to achieve? And is the light falling off at the rate at which it should be naturally? That's what adds a realism to your composites. If, you know, obviously, clearly this is a composite. There's like 30 or 40 different things in this image that have been composited. The wardrobe was originally closed. So what you're seeing as far as the doors go, that's the outside of the armoire. So I cut out the doors, flipped them, and perspectived them so they looked like it was open. So all these things, but you can see the lighting on the edge of the wardrobe, the right side of the wardrobe, it's a yellow tone right there on the edge, yet you see the white light coming through on the inside of the wardrobe. So lighting is critical to composites, but it's also critical to just standard photographic prints. You need to show a lighting pattern if you're doing a portrait. Lighting can, you know, sometimes if you have too strong a backlighting that leads the viewer's eye out of the scene, like in a landscape or a sunset, that can be extremely distracting. So lighting makes your eye guide to the right spot and is so critical in what we do. And it's, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, because you see this more than I do, but don't you think that lighting is probably the #1 reason that images get like score lower because of mistakes in lighting, or am I wrong there?
I'm going to disagree with you on that one. I'm going to say it's usually Photoshop errors followed very closely by lighting problems.
That would make sense. That would make total sense.
Yeah, at least that's what I have seen. That doesn't mean, I mean, I'm obviously not keeping detailed statistics here, but that's kind of my feeling on it.
It's totally a gut feeling. We're pulling stuff out of thin air just because we have some experience in competing. To actually see the numbers may prove differently, but I always feel like images that have lighting errors or mistakes, it's a problem. You know, it makes it not merit a lot.
Well, it does. And something else to consider about lighting, you can actually enhance your story or you can totally kill your story with the
Yeah,
wrong color temperature or the wrong kind of light.
I would
So you
agree.
would never, take a flashlight and shine it up under your chin. That's monster lighting. But if you lit your subject that way and it was supposed to be scary, it
Yeah,
worked.
then it
So
works.
there's no right or wrong for everything. It's what is appropriate for your subject matter.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Total sense.
Okay. And number 10, dun da da, subject matter. This is a freaky cool image of Julia's.
It was
Go
my
ahead, Julia.
first composite that I entered. First one. Yeah.
This is one of those images that she can tell you the exact story, and I look at it and go, it's weird, but it's cool. It's weird, but it's cool.
Totally weird. And this is me trying to learn how to composite. Okay, so I'm showing some early work here. And the name of the print is Roped into Her Imagination. So the story is how books and literature can pull you into a different place, into an imaginary fantasy land. And the subject matter is wonky. Like the book is on the raven's back, the raven is oversized, she's tiny on top of these large books. It's very fantasy-like. And, it did okay in competition. I think it scored in the mid 80s or so. It did not make loan, but it did make the showcase collection, which is kind of like a judge's choice type award. But I was really proud of this image because it was the first composite really that I ever did and entered in competition. And the first year I started competing with composites, you really only have time to do one. Like this was the only composite I entered because I was like, this is really hard.
It is. It totally is.
It totally is. But subject matter here is challenging because it's contradictory to what should be normal. The raven is too big.
The other thing is that each viewer can read something personal into this image. So when I looked at it before I knew the story, I thought she was dreaming. I didn't realize it was about the book. I thought she was dreaming, and we were like seeing a frame from her dream, which still totally works and explains all the weirdly cool things that are going on in the image.
Yes. So subject matter, I think subject matter is one of those weird, it's one of those hard to define elements of the 12 elements, but I think the biggest meaning with subject matter is that it suits the story you're trying to tell, and that there is a clear subject matter in the image. And so, here we have a subject matter that suits the story I'm trying to tell, even though it's weird, if that makes sense.
So number 11 is technique. And while we have similarities, we also are pretty different. So, and that is normal because we're talking about art. We're not supposed to be the same.
No.
But this is one of, I love this image and the story that it tells of yours, this newborn under this tree with this mama and the sheepdog and all the sheeps. And it's just a cool image. And the technique that you've used, it's soft and it's airy and it's flowing. And the technique to me is what makes this image work.
The title of it is Her Little Lamb. We're going on the story of Mary had a little lamb, that kind of thing. So that's where the title came from. But yeah, and this totally is my technique. A little painted, the mamas and the babies, the joy of being a mother is a technique and a style I use very much. The painting and the way it was painted is very much my technique. So technique has to do with how you apply the elements together. Am I right there, Michelle?
Yes, and a lot of times you'll hear judges say, I think this image has been over-techniqued.
Oh, interesting.
That is typically referring to something like Topaz Adjust,
yes,
Art, those sorts of things. Nick, that's another one. So, if you hear that, just understand that means the judge feels like too much of that technique has been left on that image.
Yes, I would agree.
Doesn't necessarily apply to this image or this image of mine, which is totally a different technique than Julia uses. I'm the insane woman that will sit and paint, individual bird feathers. So just a different technique, a totally different approach to an image. Just wanted to throw something a little different.
By the way, for those of you who don't know, this image scored 100 at districts. Was it last year or the year before?
I think it was last year.
It was
Yeah, it
last
did.
year. Yeah.
It totally did.
This is a pretty incredible image. And of course, I'm sure it reminds you of the Audubon Society, because that's the goal you were after, was to kind of.
That was totally what I was looking for. I was trying to make a modern version of an Audubon card.
Awesome. So cool. Oh my gosh. I love this image of yours. It is stunning. It's just stunning. The details, stunning.
Okay, so number 12, we're to the last element finally.
This is my favorite one.
And you're so good at it.
I love storytelling.
What is this one? Her prince has arrived.
He has arrived.
He has arrived. Yeah.
And this story here, if you think about it, really hones into the scriptures and into a more of a religious Christian connotation. He has arrived. You know, obviously that's not the in-your-face story, but that's the underlying theme that's here. It has a religious connotation to it. And I created this when I was first starting my own journey in Christianity. And to have a baby come into the forest with all the animals coming to greet him, like, gave me that feeling of Christmas morning and why we celebrate Christmas. So this image was created in that spirit, but without actually being in your face about it. But a lot of the judges got it. And in essence, the animals coming around are what created the story. So this was one of my first, second composites that I entered, I believe. And I think did it score 100? Did it score 100? You can remember, Belinda? I think it did.
I don't remember.
It was yes, it was. It was my first 100. Not that I've had many, but it was the first one.
Back-to-back hundreds here.
That was pretty exciting.
One of the things that I really love about this image is how the branches point to the baby.
Yes. Yeah.
I just think it's a subliminal thing. Hey, here's your subject right here. So that's one of the things that you can use in your own images, have elements that are not your subject pointing to your subject subliminally.
And they call that a leading line. So line that leads through the image to point you in the direction you want the viewer's eye to go.
Absolutely.
So, and also look at composition in these storytelling images. You know, this one here, there's definitely a compositional pattern, the way your eye follows the different animals around. And then in the next one that you did, I love this image, has such story. There's a ton of amazing composition here. And again, your eyes like right into the man with the gun. Like, that is where I'm supposed to go. But then my eye, based on background elements, the fire and everything, I go inside the wagon right after that to see the secondary subject, which is you, isn't it? Isn't that you?
It is actually me. I'm in the wagon pointing a gun also.
What's the name of this print? What's the name?
Who Goes There?
Who Goes There? And I think titles are so critical to storytelling. So many people don't title their images correctly, or with that adds to the image, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and gave myself a weird challenge with this image. I actually wanted to see how deep I could make an image feel.
Oh, cool.
So once you reach a certain level, you start playing mind games with yourself. And that was a mind game that I played with this. I wanted an image that felt incredibly deep, like you could see for miles.
Yes.
And I feel like I pulled that off in this image. So regardless of the score, I was happy that the image looked deep, because that was my personal challenge.
Oh, it did. And it has so much story. But look at the lighting as well. You see light temperature everywhere. The horses in the background have that blue moonlit feel. You've got a somewhat warm glow, but then because the guy in the front has a huge lantern in front of him, obviously the light is most impactful or most highest contrast on him, yet you can see the warm spill of the lantern on the grass beneath him. I mean, there is so much incredible lighting technique done here that, you know, that's what leads your eye where it's supposed to go, as well as highlights the center of interest. So this is one of those images where all the 12 elements come together to create that impact, and then the title and the subject matter itself create the story.
And the other thing is that all of the lighting, the biggest thing, if you're going to do a composite, the biggest thing that I see mistake wise in composites is that the lighting direction is not consistent.
Okay.
So if you have a light source in your image, make sure your light emanates out from that source. And don't get too crazy about having your light switching directions and stuff. So there's a little free tip thrown in there. Okay, so that pretty much covers the 12 elements that images are judged by. And we're going to shift gears just a little bit. And we're going to talk about the top 3 mistakes that I see many new competitors make. And this is kind of my personal list. This is not PPA statistics or anything like that. It's just things that I have observed while I've been competing. Mistake number 1 is not understanding that a lot of Photoshop has been done on most entries. And I'm not saying they're all Photoshopped within an inch of their life, don't get me wrong, but there is some pretty heavy Photoshop done on many, many entries. And I think Julia and I probably both fall in the heavy category.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
So this leaves a lot of new competitors feeling like they're not ready to compete because they can't see the merit in their raw images when they're comparing them to merit prints.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to do is I want to share some images with you. I'm going to show you raw files immediately followed by the merit image, because that's one of the most powerful things that I saw when I first started competing. So I just have a handful of images for you here. Y'all, I live on a farm. Okay. And when I start thinking about, let me make some competition prints, the first thing I think of is I'm going to go to the hen house. Actually, I've never thought of that. So I find this really creative. But, you know, this is the raw file. And to take from the hen house and make it look like the chickens in the studio, I just think this is amazing. So, here is another raw image where we've got, you know, a shirt that's got some wrinkles. We've got fingertips chopped off, but the expression is solid. The hat's a little busy. The lighting is fantastic. So let's think about how to make this into a merit crop to where the action is.
That's
The
awesome.
face is what sells it. And that is where we get this merit print.
So cool.
Yeah, this is a black dog on a brown box on a gray background, zero color harmony. Now, I want to preface what you're about to see with, this is not something we would do to a client image, but all is fair in love, war, and print competition, okay? So we're going to change the black dog into a brown dog and change the background brown, and now we have color harmony and a merit print.
That's awesome.
It was
So cool.
actually entered in districts, I think, without being changed and did not merit. So that is something to consider looking at an image and not understanding why it did not merit. Does it have color harmony? Here's another one. How many of us have been to the beach and seen a seagull sitting on something? It's a very, very simple image. Just take whatever that monstrosity in the background was out and you've got yourself a merit. There's not a lot of super complex things here. Merits can be very, very simple. The thing that sells this for me is the lighting is nice and directional.
I was going to say that light is beautiful.
It's stunning. It's stunning. Yes.
And the horizon line is in the right spot.
I pulled this one specifically because your crowd is a lot of maternity and newborn photographers.
Yeah, I love it.
The background is a hot mess. How many of us have ever done this? I think we all have.
I so have.
I know. If you can get control of that background, you'll find yourself with a merit print because the light is there, the expression is there, the pose is there. It's got so many great things going for it. Was the hot mess background. And she knows this is not my image. She knows that I'm going to say it's a hot mess. I'm not offending the maker.
Oh, good.
This is probably one of my favorite newborn images that I watched being judged during competition last year. Just real simple elements put together to make this. This was actually in the artist category. The title of it is Born Clever. This is a little bit more advanced competition type image, but still, it is something. It's the thought pattern that you get into and you learn to do this stuff as you go. It is the process of competition that teaches you to create these images.
Yes, I would agree. And that is dark. He's so good, Nate. He does.
Yeah, it is. This just an amazing image. And I could not pull this one from the program today for one simple reason. You might recognize that handsome young lad there on the right. That would be Julia's son. So one of my entries, I entered this into the artist category last year, and the title is Who's Training Whom?
I love it. Oh my gosh.
Just a fun image and a play on a subject matter that most people would automatically assume is scary, but I made the dragon into his friend, which is just a twist and just takes an image to a different level.
So creative. So Dean saw this and freaked out. He's like, is that me?
He's so sweet. He's such a sweetheart.
Yeah.
So don't let the Photoshop on Merit images fool you. Everybody has rough raw files. It's normal. So the second mistake that I commonly see is trying to create images that you think the judges want to see.
Okay.
That's huge. There is no right or wrong style for print competition. You have to make your style work within the 12 elements. And I am a pretty good example of being stubborn and sticking to my own style. I was not about to conform to what I thought the judges want to see, and that's why my work is different and it's easily identifiable a lot of times. So stick to your heart, follow what you want to do. Don't try to create what somebody else is creating. Create images that are in your heart, and it almost always works best. Now, don't get me wrong. I need to kind of give a little exception here. I am all about emulating artists you love until you find your own style. And that takes a little time when you first start competing. It is perfectly okay to emulate another artist. But the end goal should always be finding your own creativity, creating images that are true to you. So how do you find creativity? As part of today's broadcast, I'm actually going to give you free access to my 12-step program, because we all need a 12-step program, right? A 12-step program to find your own creativity, called The Quest for Creating the Creative Competition Image. So we'll give you some details at the end of this broadcast on how you can get access to that program. So the third and final mistake, we kind of alluded to this earlier, is actually Photoshop. The biggest reason that I feel like I see new otherwise technically sound image is weak Photoshop skills. They've just got pretty obvious Photoshop errors, and you have to keep in mind that you're putting your image in front of six sets of eyes who know way more about Photoshop than you do. That is kind of the key to it. So you have to learn to see it with the judging panel eyes. So to combat this issue, I actually teach a course called Preparing for Competition. Now, it's basically a retouching course. I'm going to teach you solid retouching techniques, but each week we talk about the print competition rules and kind of help get you up to speed and keep you from making some of the mistakes that I made, and I'm sure Julia made, when we were first starting out in competition. I'm often asked, I get asked this all the time, does the class really work? I mean, it's kind of a pricey class. Does it really work?
Am yes. Heck yes.
So I want to share this.
Girl. Yeah, that's exactly my thought.
These are graduates of the class. All of these images were created by graduates of the Preparing for Competition class. If you were at Imaging USA, you're going to recognize these as Grand Imaging Award winners and World Cup team members.
Oh,
this is the best of the best of the best. And they all started in Preparing for Competition.
Well, I remember when, like, Francie Baltazar's image, the Count's Bride down there, the second from the left.
One of my favorites.
She first entered that in Oregon State competition. I was judging. I scored it 100. It's so beautiful.
It's incredibly done. It's incredibly done. And you know, everybody in this panel here is incredibly talented. And I don't want you to feel like I made them, because I didn't. They're incredibly talented. They just needed to understand the tools in Photoshop
and the rules and figure out
the rules and
yeah,
that they took off and ran, and they did all this work on their own, and it is amazing. It is so amazing. Cool. What they've been able to accomplish.
I think it's a testament to Michelle, though, of what an incredible teacher you are. I mean,
I played like this big of a role in this. just this tiny.
You guys can't see her right now, but she's basically like holding up her little pinky.
The tiniest little bit, like a pinky fingernail worth, maybe. So if you sign up for the freebies today from this send you a link to the Preparing for Competition course just so you can kind of check it out. So to wrap things up, competition is not easy, and I know you'd agree with that, right, Julia?
Oh yeah. No.
But it
It'll
will
make you
make
pull your
you,
hair out, but it's
yeah,
worth it.
it'll make you tear your hair out, but it will make you a better artist and a better photographer. And it will also help your work stand out from the masses. And that is going to bring more clients in your door. And that is the ultimate reward for your competition efforts.
I agree 100%.
So
I
that
don't
is
think,
all I have for you today, my
oh,
dear.
it's wonderful. And I don't think, honestly, that there is, I mean, I don't think there's any other thing that improved my work more technically,
I feel the
creatively,
same way.
artistically than print competition. I mean, really, that's what,
Yeah,
and I, more than anything, it's the speed at which I grew because I was competing.
I totally
So,
agree. I went from, I'm really embarrassed from my 2010 images. And in 2012, it doesn't even look like the same photographer.
I hear you. I
Not
hear you.
even close.
I hear you. Well, before we take some questions, I want to let people know where to get the freebie. So let me go ahead and pop my screen up here. So if you would like to get the freebie, you need to go to jewel-tv.com. And once you opt in, you will have access to the Jewel TV archives. And the latest episode is at the very top of the homepage of the archives. So you'll see we have different topics there. We're going to be doing business topics, special guests, creativity. We also have a brand new thing coming out with Taka Latte or Jewel TV, which is we're going to be doing mini mentoring. So every once in a while, we're going to pick a student who's got an issue or a problem or needs help with something, and we're going to actually do like a mini mentoring session for the benefit of everyone else. And we're also going to do photo critiques. So maybe perhaps I can get Michelle to come back and help us do some critiques for image competition, but also just like, are you trying to go professional and you want to know if your imagery is consistent enough to do that? We can do mini critiques on Jewel TV as well. But to get the latest episode, go ahead and click here on that main page, and then you'll get inside the broadcast area where we're going to put the archive from today. So it's not up there yet since we're broadcasting live on Facebook this morning, but as soon as the recording is converted, I'll be uploading it to this site here as well as on YouTube, and you'll be able to see the recording in the future again here inside the Jewel TV archives. And if you want Michelle's freebie, go ahead and click there at the bottom. That will send you to Michelle's site where you can download her freebie there. She has a
Not download. It's a video course.
It's a video, got it. So it's not
Yeah.
a download, but it's a video.
Right. Yeah.
So you guys can all see that there, but you'll definitely have to give her your email too. Because hey, we don't give stuff away completely for free, do we, Michelle?
Well, I will charge you your email. That's all.
There we go. So guys, I do want to share with you before we take questions, the printing, the fine art mounting and printing course to make images like this or I should say presentations like this, if you do want to print your images, or maybe you just want to develop a new product line for clients. We have the mounting course open right now. We only open it once a year. Last time we opened it was last May, so it's only open for a few days, but you're going to learn to create three-dimensional float-mounted prints with the torn edge, lots of different fun things to do and variations. We also have a bonus lesson inside the class all about framing and inserting your images into frames. So this is stuff that not only holds true for print competition, but also for your own studio as well.
And can I just interject that even though it looks like a really complex presentation, it's actually pretty easy to do if you follow Julia's directions.
It's not that hard, and it's actually really enjoyable, and seeing your work printed like that just, it's an amazing feeling. So totally. Like I said, there's a couple bonus lessons. We even give you a presentation template to show the presentation digitally. So if you do want to enter a digital version of it, you can. Of course, the complete materials and resources guide is there as well. So the class is $199 or 2 payments of $125. And this link, it should work. If it doesn't, we've had some issues. You can see the link inside today's episode, inside Jewel-TV. You can also try going to fineartmounting.com. I redirected the link, but it's having some trouble trickling down. You'll notice if you look in your web browser address bar that there's an extra HTTP on the end. So just cut that part off. It'll take you directly to the link to enroll in the course. And of course, if you're watching us live in the J Education Facebook group, that's awesome. But if you're watching this on YouTube later, join us in the group and you can see these broadcasts live when we do air them. So I want to go ahead and take questions from everybody so we can kind of get these people out there who have some issues with print comp, or maybe they're scared to enter. Let's talk a little bit about that for about 10 minutes until we run out of time here. So Svetlana asks, was it entered in photographic or artist category? And she was referring to the almost home image, Michelle. Was that one entered in photograph?
It was artist. It was artist. And actually the horse and rider is a plastic toy.
Oh, really?
The rest of the image is freehand. So it's painted. Yeah. So that one was entered in artist category. I took a picture of a plastic toy.
Richard Sturdivant does a lot of that, where he'll take a toy, like a toy dinosaur or a lion or something, and photograph that and then composite that into an image. There's so many creative ways.
It works great.
Like, you don't actually have to go to the zoo and photograph a lion. You can go buy one from the toy store. Because they have like realistic stuff nowadays. It's amazing.
Amazon is where I get my plastic toys.
Right. Anything to get a good image, right? And a lot of people ask me, should I shoot for competition? What do you think about that?
I did a combination of both. I shot a lot of client work when I was working on my degree, but once I had the degree and I had gotten it with, I think 10 of my 13 images were client work, I decided that I wanted to play. Yeah. I just wanted to play, and print my creative outlet and my playtime. So I do shoot specifically for print competition, and it is a piece that I've probably been mulling over for a year because it is totally how I express my creativity at this point.
I think it just depends on your own. A lot of people want to get because for those of you who are new to competition, a merit earns you essentially a point.
It's like a credit.
Like a credit. Yeah. And then you can earn enough credits to get what they call a Master of Photography degree. And a lot of people want to earn that just on client work for their own personal challenge. So I think it's a personal decision as to whether or not you want to use client work.
It is, and there's no right or wrong answer on that at all.
No. So Angela asks, what do you put behind the mat? And I'm not sure what she's referring to. I think
betting it's behind your torn images.
Maybe that's all in the print mounting course, but basically it's just a mounting foam that's put back there. But of course, all that information is in the mounting course and in the materials guide.
Yeah.
Claire says, should you always mat a print for competition rather than just send the print in?
Absolutely.
Presentation
is one of the 12 elements.
It is.
So if you do not have presentation, it's kind of, when you judge a print, it's kind of like the judge's scale that you see in a lawyer's office. You put the good stuff in one side and the not so good stuff in the other side. And if it balances out to the good, you get a merit. If you don't, you don't. So if you do a presentation, it's a drop in the negative bucket, and you don't really want that.
I agree 100%. So Mary Ellen asks, will Julia be competing this year in district competition?
Julia, will you? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Did I plead the fifth here?
I think that's acceptable right now.
I'm going to plead the fifth for now. Maybe. Not sure yet. Okay, Monica says, I got here late, so forgive me if this was already answered. Can anyone enter a composite image, or do you have to have certain credentials? That's a great question.
Anyone can enter any image, and they are all judged individually. And just because we didn't say it earlier, the judging is totally anonymous. We have no idea who created the image, and judges are required to disqualify themselves from judging that print if they know who the maker is.
And that's really important and the other thing you want to make sure you're aware of is you want to find a few people that you can trust to help you with images, or at least guide you in that process. I mean, I needed that badly. And clearly you have to do all the work. That's the whole point. You can't let someone else do the work for you. But you want somebody to at least help you see, I always trade prints back and forth with people, and I go, what do you see that's wrong with it? What do you see that's wrong with it? And they'll tell me, and then I have to go back and fix it.
So totally. And both of us are competing at a pretty advanced level. And the fact that we're still having to send our prints to other people should tell you something.
Yes.
You get to the point where you can't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly.
You've got to send it to somebody else.
You do. And it's important to find somebody who can help you with that, but it's also important not to just put your images out there publicly, because then judges will see it and they have to DQ or disqualify.
Yes.
And you don't
Do
want to be
not
in that
post
situation.
your images on social media if you're planning to enter them, not even on your business page.
No. Now, there are some private competition groups out there. As a matter of fact, I have a secret group that I can post a link to in our Facebook, J Education Facebook group here. But that's a place where you can post images and get some feedback. Now, there are judges in there, so you need to be careful. And sometimes you want the judges to look at your work, but you just got to make sure they're not going to be at the competition that you're entering, because they'll have to DQ. And sometimes that can really hurt you in competition.
Well, and that you have posting etiquette in your group. So as long as you follow the posting etiquette, you're pretty safe to post even with judges in that group. And the judges that are scheduled to judge know that they're scheduled to judge. It's not a surprise.
Yes.
So, they avoid those kinds of groups when they know they have a judging coming up, because they don't want to be contaminated.
Contaminated.
Yep.
Don't let my eyes be contaminated. Okay. Monica Silver asks, when you create a composite, do all of the elements have to be photographed by yourself? For example, a rabbit, bird, mouse, or can you use stock images? This is another great question.
Yes, it is. For the photographic open,
So let's make it clear. You can enter composites into photographic open.
Correct. So there are two categories, the photographic open and the artist category. For the photographic open, you must photograph every photographic element in the image.
And
everything.
That's a new rule this year, right?
That is a new rule this year. So, if you have a photographic background that you didn't photograph, it is my understanding that you can't really enter that in competition.
In open.
Digital backgrounds as well. That is my understanding of the rule.
Digital backgrounds as well. Okay, so
if it is photographic in nature, if it is old masters painterly style, you're good. You're good.
Repeat that again, because I'm not following.
So there are some manufacturers that print backgrounds that look like photographs.
Okay.
If you didn't take that picture, it's illegal.
Really? So even
that is my understanding.
If say for example, I got a background from Denny Manufacturing or whatever, some of these other companies that's photographic in nature.
Correct.
Put a subject on that background. I can't enter that in open if I didn't photograph the background image.
That is my understanding of the rule.
Really? I didn't know that. Ooh,
that is my understanding.
So something we need to be aware of this year.
If it is painterly or old masters style, then it is a legal background to use.
Okay. Okay.
Same with digital backgrounds. If they're painterly or old master style, they're legal. If they're photographic in nature, they're not legal. That is my understanding of the rule.
Interesting. Okay, good to know. I didn't know that. That's a new one for this year.
New rule for this year, yes.
Very cool. Okay, so
and I don't think I fully answered that question.
What'd you say? I'm sorry?
I don't think I fully answered that question. We went down a rabbit hole.
I think you did. It's okay.
Okay, so artist category, you do not have to take all of the photographs. You can use stock, you can get images from friends. That is kind of the freedom of the artist category. So the image that I created of Dean with the dragon, I called Julia up and she crawled off her sick bed, God love her, and took that picture of Dean for me because I told her exactly what I wanted and sent it to me. And I was able to enter that as a legal entry in the artist category.
That makes total sense. Oh, I remember that. I was really sick that day.
Thank you.
Okay, anything for you. I would do anything for you. Jennifer Hamilton asks, how would you suggest editing journalistic work for competition? I shoot births, and I love to compete with some of the images, but I'm not sure how to make them competition ready.
Oh my goodness, this is probably my weakest area. You found my Achilles heel. There are some really talented photojournalistic folks out there. The one that comes to mind is Paul Wengler. He travels to Honduras frequently and photographs the people there. And I believe he got his whole master's degree on photojournalistic type images. So I would recommend that you kind of go stalk his website and kind of see how he's processing his images and kind of take your cues from that, because seriously, I can't be an expert on everything, and
Yeah.
that is my Achilles heel right there.
But the 12 elements still apply. You
They
still
do.
want
They
your
totally
subject
do.
matter. You still need that impact. You still need the story. You still need the lighting. All those things still need to come together, because when you're entering something in photographic open, the judges don't know it's a photojournalistic image. There's no like subcategory.
Well, there are subcategories, and they tell you if you're judging illustrative or portrait.
Yes. Yes.
And the photojournalistic ones are typically illustrative because they're more story than portrait. That's kind of my distinction when I'm thinking about those images.
Makes sense.
That's Michelle Parsely rule, not PPA rule.
Yeah.
If it's a portrait and clearly a portrait, I put it in photographic open portrait. If it's a story, but it's also a portrait, I put it in illustrative.
That makes sense. Total sense. And I think that answers it. But yeah, no, good resources. So Farah asks, I've got somebody coming in here. It's my UPS guy. Hey,
What's up?
Farah has a real working studio around here. How do we find competitions to enter? Which do we start? Do we have to be a member of the organization? How do we find local chapters, etc.? I love these questions. They're awesome. This is another
They are awesome. They're asking really great questions. So I would start at your guild level. Most states have guilds as well as a state association.
Okay, so what is a guild?
The guild is like, so I live in Tennessee, and there's a Middle Tennessee guild, and there's an East Tennessee guild, and there's a West Tennessee guild. So the guild gets together periodically, and they have mock judgings. You can enter the mock judgings. They have speakers come in and stuff like that. So that's a good place to start. The next place to start would be your state association. Google's your friend on that. You can probably Google and find your state association pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then your PPA membership as well. That'll get you hooked up with the district and the international competition. And you want to talk about jumping in the deep end of the pool? Start with districts. Right. Nobody told me about states. I went straight to districts.
Yeah, that was brave. Woo! Well, also, one of the best things that I always tell people to do is go to printcompetition.com.
Absolutely.
A lot of the states and the guilds are listed there, and they air their print competition on the internet live when it happens.
Totally, and it's great education.
Yeah, you can go and listen to the judges online, and not, you don't have to be a member. You can watch it for free, or you can pay like, I think it's $10 a quarter to have access to the archive, so you can see tons of images that have been entered in print competition and hear recordings of what the judges have said about them, which right there is a huge, I mean, that is worth $40 a year, left, right, inside, and out.
Totally.
I always say go to printcompetition.com, and like my guild, my state competition, OPPA, they run their competition through printcompetition.com. So if I'm competing, I could just watch it from here in Bend, even though it's taking place in Portland, and see my images come through on printcompetition.com.
And when you and I started out, we did not have resources like that.
You had to actually go and sit there all day.
Amazing.
Like nowadays, PPA like texts you when your image is like 10 images away. Like,
it's amazing.
When we did it, I had to actually drive to wherever the competition was and sit there all patient and quiet, waiting image after image after image for mine to come.
And then not squeal when it actually did come.
Right? Oh, no, that image, he has a
and not move. Sit on your hands and don't move.
Yeah, right. I was in district at in California when he has arrived, the mama with the baby on all the animals. She that image came up and it scored 100. I seriously wanted to squeal in the back of the audience, and I could not.
You can't. You can't.
I ran out of the room and down the hall. And the minute the door shut, I'm like, freaking out.
Well, the first 100 I got, I was home alone, and I was jumping up and down and screaming. If somebody had been here, they'd have thought I saw a mouse or something. Totally acting a fool, but man, it's so exciting.
It's so exhilarating. Even and their first merit. I mean, I remember getting my first merit. It's an incredible feeling.
Totally. Worth every ounce of pain.
It is worth every ounce of pain. So Ann Edmonds wanted to give you a little shout out, Michelle. She says, all the love to Michelle's class. She says it helped not only for competition, but for client work too. And I could not.
You are awesome, Anne. Thank you.
So yeah. Okay. So I think that's about all the questions we have. Oh, one more. Mary Larson said, can you define painterly? What does painterly mean?
Painterly. Not photographic. Looks like it's been painted. It's sort of realistic, but it's painted rather than being photographic in nature.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, we've already gone on for an hour and 15 minutes. It's
Holy cow.
Okay. I know, can you believe it? I could talk to you forever. So go ahead and go to jewel-tv.com to opt in for the archives and to get access to Michelle's freebie. Michelle, of course, is giving away her 12-step program to be more creative.
And I'm also going to include PPA's entry system is a little confusing the first couple times you do it. So I'm also going to toss in for y'all just myself entering my own prints so you can see what the entry system looks like, because you do have to enter your images online.
Okay.
And it's a recording from a couple of years ago, but the system's pretty much the same. It walks you through step by step by step, because I can't tell you how many people have called me crying saying I accidentally entered my prints into the wrong category.
Yes.
I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop this right now.
And people enter at the last minute, and then they have technical problems and they kind of freak out so watch those videos. It'll give you so much of an education right off the bat. And of course, to view this again and again and again, you can go to jewel-tv.com and put in your email to access the archive. So love you guys. Looks like the FedEx guy's here now. Sweet. It's one of my clients. It's one of my clients. Hi, how are you? So I should probably get rolling.
Yikes, we went over.
Michelle, it's okay. Thank you so much, everyone. And thanks again for watching jewel-tv.com. I appreciate it. And we'll see you all next week when we talk about developing and building a product line for your studio. So we'll see you all
Thank you for having me, Julia.
Thank you,
Bye.
Michelle. You were awesome. Bye-bye, everyone.